the anti-guru.
If you spend absolutely any time on social media these days, you've definitely seen them. Those viral videos where a driver is pulled over on the side of the road, and they're confidently telling a police officer that they don't need a driver's license or even license plates because they're exercising their fundamental right to travel. And honestly, it sounds incredibly compelling, right? It sounds like this secret constitutional loophole. But in today's Explainer, we are going to look closely at a legal memorandum that breaks down exactly what the United States Constitution actually says about this right. We'll look at where these internet claims go totally off the rails and what the law actually requires of us. So here's our roadmap for this Explainer. We're covering the right to travel myth, the real right defined, movement versus motor vehicles, debunking common false claims, and finally, bring law, not slogans. Real quick, before we jump in, let's just set our rules of engagement. This Explainer is strictly for legal education and issue spotting based on our source memorandum. This is not personalized legal advice, and it definitely doesn't apply the law to any specific person, traffic stop, or pending court case. Okay, let's get into Section 1, the right to travel myth, confronting the viral claims. I guarantee you've heard bold statements just like this one. The Constitution says I can travel, so police cannot stop me. What's happening here is that people are conflating a genuine, fundamental constitutional principle with, well, total immunity from traffic laws. You see the phrase right to travel thrown around like it's some sort of magic spell that instantly vaporizes all laws about roads, vehicles, licensing, and insurance. But as the legal memo points out, using this phrase without any actual legal precision leads to a really massive misunderstanding of American law. That brings us to Section 2, the real right defined, validating the Constitution. And here is where we actually get to validate the core premise of those viral videos. Because yes, the constitutional right to travel absolutely 100% exists. It is very real, it's long-standing, and it's been repeatedly recognized by the United States Supreme Court. The modern framework for this right comes from a really important 1999 Supreme Court case called Saenz v. Roe. And as laid out in that ruling, the genuine right to travel protects three very specific forms of interstate migration. First, it protects your right to physically enter and leave another state without the government heavily taxing your exit or blocking your entry. Second, it protects your right to be treated as a welcome visitor while you're temporarily in another state. Basically, a state can't treat you like a hostile outsider just because you have different license plates. And third, it protects the right of a newly arrived resident to be treated exactly equally with other citizens of their new state once they officially move there. So this perfectly illustrates the true nature of the right to travel. The Supreme Court established this doctrine to prevent states from penalizing migration or treating new citizens as second class. For instance, in that Saenz v. Roe case, the whole issue was California trying to limit welfare benefits for brand new residents, which was essentially punishing them just for migrating there. So the right to travel is fundamentally about national unity and your freedom to move across state lines. What it is not about is erasing all highway safety regulations. Let's move to Section 3, Movement versus Motor Vehicles, the Great Pivot. This right here builds toward the critical legal pivot where almost all of those internet arguments just totally collapse. The crucial thing is visualizing this really stark legal distinction. On one side, we have interstate movement. That is your fundamental constitutional right to move from place to place. You can walk across a state border, you can ride a bus, you can be a passenger in a car. But contrast that with the other side, operating a motor vehicle. The courts view piloting a 2-ton gas-powered machine down a public road not as some unrestrained fundamental right, but as a regulated activity that is subject to a state's police power. And this is the exact spot where the legal mistake happens. People are collapsing the fundamental right to migrate with the highly regulated privilege of driving a vehicle. If you don't believe me, just look at this systematic march through a whole century of Supreme Court precedents. They prove time and time again that state police powers can lawfully mandate licenses, registrations, and safety rules. Take Hendrick versus Maryland way back in 1915. The court bluntly stated that motor vehicles present constant dangers, making them totally proper subjects of regulation. Well, what about out-of-state travelers? In 1916, Kane v. New Jersey confirmed they are subject to those exact same rules. Jumping to 1941, Wrights v. Mealy officially tied driver licensing directly to public safety. And finally, Bell versus Burson in 1971. Now, this case is so often misunderstood on the internet. It says the government absolutely must give you due process before taking your license away, but it literally does not say the government can't require you to have a license in the first place. Now we're ready for Section 4, Debunking Common False Claims, the Clash. With our legal foundation fully built, we are perfectly positioned to smash these viral internet myths right against the cold, hard facts. Let's start with this one. The right to travel means I do not need a driver's license. This is probably the single most common internet slogan out there. You'll see drivers literally hand police officers printed out sheets of paper claiming they are traveling, not driving. But the legal reality, which is supported directly by those Supreme Court cases like Hendrick and Kane we just talked about, completely shatters this myth. Operating a vehicle on public highways has been treated as a highly regulable activity for over 100 years. Why? Precisely because of the constant danger it poses to public safety and to our infrastructure. I mean, it's a huge piece of heavy machinery. Even fundamental rights can be subject to lawful regulation when public safety is on the line.
Okay, how about this one? I am not engaged in commerce, so traffic laws do not apply. This is another incredibly common phrase you're going to hear in those traffic stop videos. The driver will claim that they're using their private property for personal travel, not for any kind of commercial business, and therefore state vehicle codes simply don't apply to them. The fatal flaw in that argument is a really deep misunderstanding of where state power actually comes from. These internet theories assume that traffic laws only stem from the Commerce Clause, meaning they think rules only apply to commercial 18-wheelers or delivery trucks. But in reality, traffic laws fall under a state's broad police power. And police power is just the inherent authority of a state government to enact laws that protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. The state isn't regulating you because you're doing business, they are regulating you to ensure you don't accidentally crash your car into a family driving in the opposite lane. It's all about general highway safety. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Bring Law, Not Slogans, Finding the Correct Question. Let's step into our conclusion here and really shift your mindset. We need to move away from repeating catchy internet slogans and move toward rigorous legal issue spotting. When you are dealing with motor vehicle regulations, asking, "Do I have a right to travel?" is entirely the wrong starting point. If you start there, you are asking a broad philosophical question, while the officer standing at your window is looking at a highly specific safety code violation. Yes, you have a right to travel, but as we've learned today, that absolutely doesn't mean you have a right to drive an unregistered car down the interstate. Instead, this is the correct, highly specific legal question you actually have to ask to figure out if a state has overstepped its constitutional boundaries. You have to ask, is the law physically blocking you from entering a state? Is it heavily taxing you just for trying to leave? If so, well, you might actually have a real constitutional case. Or, on the flip side, is it simply a neutral safety regulation like requiring auto insurance or a valid license that applies uniformly to everyone on the highway to prevent terrible accidents? The right to travel protects your freedom to move throughout the Union and become an equal citizen of a brand new state. It is a beautiful, vital part of the American legal structure, but it absolutely does not create some magical immunity from reasonable laws regulating the safe operation of motor vehicles on public roads. So the next time you see one of those viral videos of someone confidently debating the right to travel on the side of the highway, you have to ask yourself, are they just relying on a catchy myth, or do they actually understand the law? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep asking the right questions.
We question everything they taught you, because the comfortable lie is the most dangerous one.